The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel is a game that oftentimes gets compared to Persona, and while there are similarities, I feel like comparing it to Persona gives off false expectations. That doesn't mean that the game can't hold up on its own. As a matter of fact, it's one of my favorite games released this generation. Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel is a game that does things very differently when it comes to its story. The story is more about the characters and the interactions the characters have with each other, rather than having one huge narrative. And it is through these character interactions that the world of Trails of Cold Steel truly shines. So is Trails of Cold Steel worth playing? Is it a game that you should check out? Well, sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's get into a review of The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. Trails of Cold Steel is the 11th entry in Nihon Falcom's long-running The Legend of Hero franchise, and the 6th game in the Trails subseries. The Trails series first started with Trails in the Sky in 2004 and would continue with 2 other games in the Trails in the Sky series. Nihon Falcom would go on to make Trails of Azure and Trails of Zero. These 2 games would go on to make the Crossbell arc. Though they have never officially been released outside of Japan, there are fan translations available to play. Nihon Falcom would go on to make Trails of Cold Steel for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita. It's also available on PC and PlayStation 4 if you are curious about getting into the series. It isn't required to play the other games, but they do share lore and characters throughout the games. One big connection is obviously Crossbell, which plays a major part in Cold Steel narrative and is the setting for Zero and Azure games. The games stand enough on its own. It doesn't require you to play the other games. Though it is my first in the series, it has sparked my interest to go back and play the other games that I have missed out on and see how the bigger narrative unfolds. Trails of Cold Steel is a game that puts character relationship and development above all else. This is the game's strongest narrative feat. Dialogue is front and center. Much like Persona, you'll be spending a lot of time in dialogue as the game's world builds itself and we learn more about the characters. Be mindful of that when looking into this game. Trails of Cold Steel's characters are the real bread and butter of this journey, and it is through Class 7 we get to see many of the events that take place in the world. Our adventure starts as Reinswarzer arrives at Thor's military academy and is placed in a special class along with 8 others. He, among the other 8 students, were chosen because of their aptitude to use a special Arcus that allows them to connect with one another. The Arcus is what gives people the ability to use magic. The story follows Class 7 on their adventures through field studies, seeing the continent of Erebonia and the various factions that govern it. What makes this game great is many of the characters' families are the cause of a lot of turmoil and trouble going on in the world, and sometimes directly affects another classmate's family. The game is structured on a social class system, made up of nobles and commoners, a theme that the game will constantly remind you of, and it handles it extremely well. The social structures and politics of the world is something that builds as the game progresses. It's definitely a very political-driven narrative and isn't your typical teen save the world. Oftentimes, the characters will have to play off of each other's strengths and use each other's knowledge of the way that the world works to figure things out. Much like the Arcus that they use to link together, it's through their friendships they build that make up the story. There really isn't a weak character in the game. They all play a crucial role in the story and feel like they belong. Even the comic relief characters feel as though they fit into the narrative, a feat not many games can say they accomplish. The first game sets up a sequel and leaves you with a massive cliffhanger. It's a journey that takes time to establish its world, I can only imagine how much more I will begin to respect this game and what it was trying to establish as I progress through the second game. Another place Trails of Cold Steel really shines is its gameplay, more specifically its combat. As mentioned before, characters are able to link up with each other with a special kind of Arcus. This plays a crucial role in battle and is oftentimes required in order to beat bosses and formulate strategy. Most enemies have a certain weakness in which they can be unbalanced with. This falls into 4 categories: slash, pierce, thrust, and strike. By unbalancing an enemy, this allows other linked users to use a follow-up attack and deal additional damage to the enemy. Sometimes the character who originally attacked gets another attack, though this happened at random and I didn't find it happening very frequently. As the story progresses, you'll be able to use break attacks, allowing 2 linked users to perform a combined attack. Eventually, you'll unlock Burst, which is a follow-up attack with all active party members in battle. Links also provide you with special abilities depending on how high said links are. With this can be taking the brunt of an attack for another character, healing a character after they are damaged. Certain characters have special kinds of link abilities. By equipping quartz, the characters are able to use magic throughout the game. These are shared by characters and can be equipped accordingly. Not all quartz are used for magic though. Some increase EP, which allows you to use magic, increase attack or defense or speed. Playing around with them is going to be beneficial in formulating strategies and gaining the upper hand in battle. Aside from quartz, each character also has craft arts that they are able to use unique to them. These are often attacks stronger than the original and allow you to hit multiple enemies at once or buffing up and healing the party. These attacks do consume CP, which can be restored by taking damage and using regular attacks. Each character also has an S-craft. This is a special ability that consumes all CP but deals massive damage. CP can reach a maximum of 200. You only need 100 CP to use S-craft, but it will deal extra damage if you have it charged up to 200. Either way, it uses it all. You will need to carefully plan when is a good time to use these abilities and when is a good time to save CP. One thing I did notice that is worth mentioning is how you level up. Grinding was effective if you're a lower level than what was recommended for the area. You would level up really fast. The higher number you are past the recommended level, leveling slows down. This allows difficulty to come from battles, meaning if you get your ass kicked by a boss, you probably need to go back and reevaluate your approach to ensure victory. Though being linked with a character in battle also levels up the link between 2 characters, you have moments at your school to use bonding points. These are moments when you hang out with your classmates and get to know them a bit better. Doing so will also increase the link between Reen and the characters. I feel like this is where some of the Persona references come into play, but it's not really as intricate as Persona social links, so don't expect anything on the level of Persona. I was amazed at how well this game could pace itself. It follows a specific formula and somehow works and doesn't grow old. You're given side quests to complete around school, explore the schoolhouse, hang out with your classmates, do practical exams, head off to your field exam, and do side quests there as well. It's a structure that works and no amount of explaining is going to make it sound entertaining. Much like Persona, it's just fun. So subtle little nods that I truly loved was how each person on the campus had a name. The voice acting is spot on and the English dub cast really does an incredible job at bringing the characters to life. I'm reviewing it for the PC, but I believe it had just as much voice acting as the PlayStation 4 version, though keep in mind that the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 3 do not have near the amount of dialogue that the other versions have. The music is great too. I found myself humming the songs on multiple occasions throughout the day. The music plays crucial parts in adding emotion of some scenes. I will say that this game's soundtrack is hands down one of the best I have heard in quite a while. I don't think I've enjoyed a game soundtrack as much as this since Persona 5 really, and before that it was I Am Setsuna, so kudos to the composers. They've done a really beautiful job with the soundtrack. The humor is great, as is the characters' reactions. The NPCs add a lot of story to the world. It would be to your benefit to explore and talk to people. Most people have individual problems that make them feel like they are just ordinary people with ordinary problems making up the world. There are some small interface issues, such as text appearing outside of the box sometimes. I think the graphics look great, but they're not top-notch. They don't need to be, though. I also think it is odd when a character talks and you clearly know who it is, yet it says something like green-haired boy, but I'm nitpicking at this point to find complaints. Overall, this is an incredible game that should not be missed. If you're a fan of Japanese RPGs, this is a must-play. There is a sequel with a third game on its way and the fourth hopefully soon, so getting into the series is an investment. There are also the Sky Arcs and the Crossbell Arc games you may want to explore. Playing through this game has sparked my interest in going back and learning the lore I missed out on. Nihon Falcom by far is one of the best developers out there right now, and this series along with their company deserves your support. This is why I am giving Trails of Cold Steel the Gaming with Spoons seal of approval. All in all, Trails of Cold Steel is a really great game that I do recommend you play. But it's hard to recommend it to everybody because it really is an investment of 2 games. With Trails of Cold Steel 3 being localized this year and Trails of Cold Steel 4 hopefully coming, that's an investment of 4 games. Still, if you're curious and you really want to experience one of this generation's best RPGs, then Trails of Cold Steel is a game that you will want to play. Its soundtrack is great, its characters are memorable, and its characters are more than anything the bread and butter of this game. If it really wasn't for those characters, I don't think I would have been drawn to this game as much as I was. But because I cared about the characters, I started to care about the world that they lived in. And if the finale is anything to hint at what Trails of Cold Steel 2 is going to deliver with its narrative, it is a game when I get more free time that I'm really looking forward to being able to sink in hours of gameplay and enjoy. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons. Be sure to hit subscribe there if you have not already to keep up to date with all of my content. And most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.